I'm not sure myself.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, you guys. Good afternoon. Hope everyone is good. I know it's end of term stuff coming up here, so I just want to say a couple of things about class-related material. Okay. So just going to start with that. So for lab number 8, that's the lab that you should be completing in today's lecture education piece. So just make sure that you do complete it. If you don't have a lab form, but you have questions, you can answer it on a separate sheet of paper. That's totally fine. And just make sure that you're handing it in to me after before you leave. Okay, so name on it and hand it in to me at the end. Okay? Good, you guys? Okay. So I'm just going to start by introducing the group, and then I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to them. And so they're going to be presenting to you today on para soccer, educating you on what Paralympic soccer entails. You guys are more than welcome to take notes, and if you actually want at the end, I am videotaping it, so you can gain access to that if you'd like. So to start by giving a warm welcome to the para soccer team's head coach, Drew Ferguson. And their captain, Dustin. And our former student, Kyle. Kyle's actually over at Twist Conditioning, so he's coming to talk to you guys today about sporting conditioning and skills education. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started.
Okay, hi guys. What we're going to try to do, because I'm not sure what we're trying to do, but we will achieve this as a group. So I'm going to spend about 20 minutes just giving you a little bit of a background of the program itself and what we do. This PowerPoint is not built for this actual class, it's PowerPoint that we built for something else. So I've just pulled a few things out to give me little reminders so that I can sort of talk about it. So if you think the PowerPoint's not very good, don't worry, because we didn't build it for this personally. But what we do need from you probably to make it worth your time is for you towards the end ask questions, but also if I'm going through, you can ask me questions. As Dustin's going through his asking questions, Kyle's going through his asking questions. And at the end, if we have to deal with more of it, we can do it, right? Because again, I'm not sure, what you may be looking for something that I haven't touched base with, but if you ask me, then we can touch base on that, if that makes any sense. The first time we're stuck on a screen like this, I've never seen this big before, so if anybody has bad eyes, you should be okay. Alright? So just real quickly, you see how big that PowerPoint is? Well, I'll just tell you how the program started. So the program started in 2005. Well, I believe it started in 2004, before I was involved. So I retired. I played professional soccer for 12 years. Played for the Vancouver Whitecaps back in 1976, 77 area when probably your fathers were watching this. I actually retired in 1991 and I coached professionally for a few years. Then moved back to my hometown of Colorado to run soccer academies. I was approached to take over this project with the Canadian Cerebral Palsy Sports Association. Did that for a couple months, and the Canadian Soccer Association came on board with the program and hired me full time. We started in 2005, and we'll show you some clips a little later, but basically in 2005, the athletes that we had, they were basically athletes, or potential athletes, but they were not necessarily soccer players. So I think Dustin, maybe Chris Durson are the only two players that are in the program still from 2005 to now. So in 2005, I took a training camp in Toronto to see what the athletes looked like or what they were doing, because I knew nothing about cerebral palsy or acquired brain injury. I knew nothing about it myself. It was interesting at the very best. Probably scared me a little bit that I didn't really want to take that role at first, because the disabilities at that time were very, very strong. The one thing I found really quickly was their attitude was very, very good. I coached professional soccer players, and right up to this day now, and their attitudes are, in general, horrendous. And the attitudes of these athletes with disabilities are absolutely brilliant. So from then on, I decided to stick with it and probably turn out the rest of my coaching career at the able-bodied professional career, because I've gone that route. And it's very hard to find a Whitecap job now. I'll tell them for the last 20 years I've been coaching disability soccer, right? So. But it's worked out very well. I'm happy I stuck with it. 2005, we went to our first competition in Connecticut. Got stuffed by every team in the world possibly. You know, we scored about 8 field goals. We might have got close at the end, but again, we had athletes that really didn't know anything about the game. People with disabilities that were trying to teach them how to play soccer, right? And with no disrespect to them, it was like taking a 6-year-old able-bodied boy and trying to teach him how to play soccer. So now in 2013, we are now ranked 11th in the world. So we've gone from wherever that was 37th to 11th in that short period of time. In 2005, the United States, who's been to every Paralympics, they stuffed us 6-0, I believe. It could have been comfortably 15-0 if our keeper wasn't brilliant. And 2 years later, in Brazil, 2007, we beat them 1-0 for the bronze medal game in the Pan Ams. So we've come a long, long way in a short period of time. And mostly to do with the athletes. So now we have, and we'll go through the but now we have and I can go recruiting, we're now finding soccer players with disabilities, physical disabilities, versus finding athletes with disabilities or people with disabilities, physical disabilities, and trying to teach them soccer. So my job has got easier as the years have gone over, because now we can work on tactical stuff and technical stuff versus teaching them how to kick the ball, stop the ball, and where they're supposed to run and where they're not supposed to run. Okay, so we'll just try to talk you through a few of these things first and then go from there. So players who qualify for our program, so mild cerebral palsy. So Dustin is a perfect example of somebody with mild cerebral palsy, right? So he's affected just on a little bit on his left side, a little bit on his right side, a little bit on his right hand. And so that's pretty much his disability right there. And if a ball came to him right now, he'd hit his foot and go there somewhere. He's not very good with his right foot after that. He's working on that very hard. Right? So mild cerebral palsy would be, or an acquired brain injury or head injury. So, for example, we have a fellow named Trevor Stiles, who 5 years ago was playing in the LA Galaxy with David Beckham, same team, right? And he was a keeper. He's from Victoria, BC actually. He took the old, came out, took some player's knee on the head. Supposedly, actually turned this brain at almost quarter to half an inch right around his head. And he wears the old helmet now. Really should be playing. We're not sure, but he does play. We play him as a forward. I mean, he's been tested obviously by the doctor that. We play him as a forward because he's 6'5", big boy, strikes the ball very, very well, but he will not hit the ball, right? So the ball's coming at his head. He will jump up and try to take on his chest, or literally the other way, which at times doesn't believe me, but that's part of life that he's in with us. We have another player that has acquired brain injury, that Jamie Hickey Close, who played for Canada's able-bodied under-17 team. And he was playing baseball for fun on a rainy day, and somebody played, swung the bat, came out of his head, hit Jamie on the right side of his head. He's got a plate in there now. He's actually 42 years old, I believe, but he's a very, very fit man. Very, very fit man, 42, and a quality player. So the acquired brain injury players are people that played at a high level of soccer. Unfortunately, had an accident, but they can still play. So realistically, could you all watch sports now? You look at the Eric Menders, all these people who've had these head injuries. Could they play in para sports? Or 100%. You could definitely qualify for the soccer because that's one of the classifications. And then recovering stroke, for the basic reason as if you've seen anybody with a stroke or vice versa, you will see that they carry their arm or their leg the same way. So you see somebody with a small stroke, they'll put one shoulder, one arm, one leg. So those three things all sort of fit the criteria, and they're the only three things. So there is an amputee soccer, there's blind soccer, there's deaf soccer, there's power soccer, there's wheelchairs, but this is the only three criteria that fit our program. I'm not going to be about to spit all these words elsewhere, but soccer that we play 7-a-side soccer, but it's on a very, very large field. So if you took the field that the Vancouver Whitecaps play on and make it probably 8/10 of that field, we play the game with 7 people on it. So the athletes have to be so fit, so fit. It's unbelievable. So we have 4 classes, CP5, CP6, CP7, and CP8. So without trying to be mocking anybody, I'll show you what they are without one. But CP5, so both sides of this athlete's body will be affected. So maybe both his hands, maybe both their legs, or potentially, if a good enough athlete, could be feet, legs, and hands. So it's basically their hips and their knee knot. So a lot of times when we see people, back when I was somebody your age, we used to call it pigeon toed. Right? When we see kids, that was probably rude because they may have had cerebral palsy. So most CP5s, their legs would be locked, and that would be their walk. That would be a, so if you see people walking a bit like that, there's a chance. When Dustin walks, his right foot, he helps his way a bit, right? So CP5 has that spastic diplegia, hemiplegic experience. So they're one way to hip thrust. I mean, you'll see people walking down the street and they're like this. I mean, that's obviously CP. That's not mild CP, but that's definitely a person with cerebral palsy. CP6 is the exact same thing as 5, except that they may have part of their face maybe, they could be talking and swearing a bit and kind of have you when I get nervous. But they'll have part of one side of the face maybe, but otherwise the same idea is that. Class 7 is a perfect, Dustin is a perfect example of class 7. One side of his body is affected. Sometimes, depending on what country we're at, it's fairly suspicious of some of the athletes in the Eastern Bloc countries, but it may be only an arm and not the feet. So, potentially the Russians and the Ukrainians, the Iranians, their whole team has, every athlete's got the exact same disability, but they can play the bottom of their legs are right. So those teams there could compete with Vancouver Whitecaps, Toronto FC, because they're full-time pros for a start. Their disability is only in their arm, and most CP athletes, 7 would be arm and foot. CP8, Class 8 is one that baffles me a wee bit. It's the one where which mild CPs where you wouldn't even see it to the naked eye. They would have it, but it's not, you can't see it. Or it's the head injuries. Okay, so Trevor and Jamie, they came here right now and stood here and talked for 4 hours with you, walked around, went and played soccer, you would not see their disability. You would not, I don't see the disability. Trust me, they had a disability. Because when we talk to them at times, they're moody, when we have issues with them at times, and there's no doubt, thought I could tell you for sure, that they have a disability. But when they go on the soccer field, that disability disappears. Because they're in game day and they're out to the races, right? So those are the 4 classes. When we play 7 aside, you have to have one CP5 on the field at all times, right? You have to have, or you can only have, one CP8 on the field at all times, right? So you could have 1 8 or no 8s, but you can't have 2 or 3 8s. You could have 1 5 or 2 5s or 3 5s. United States, in London when I was watching them, they had 3 CP5s on the field at the same time, which is amazing. In Canada, I have a hard time finding CP5 athletes who play soccer at a high level. They had 3 on the field competing against the best players in the world. So they have something I wish we had, but we have some of the best CP8s in the world, and we've got something they probably wish they had, right? And the rest could be CP7. So realistically, you could play 1 5 and all 7s, right? If a CP5 got injured and you never had another CP5 on the field, you would play a man short. So that's basically to try to even the game. 2 years ago and back, the rules were you were allowed 2 CP8s on the field. They've just changed to this year because at the London Paralympics, the sponsors that paid for all the money came to watch all the games. There's average about 22,000 per game at football games. And we went and watched the blind soccer, there was 2,000 people, there's 22,000 people average every game. But it became a problem that the level was so high that they kept saying, where's the disability? Right? They confronted the federation thing because they watch blind soccer, and people pair up with blind, they got the blindfolds on, they're walking playing soccer, they watch swimming, there's amputees, there's everything, they watch track and field, there's people in wheelchairs. And then they come watch the soccer, and these guys are doing scissor kicks from 25 yards out, lying in the top corner, hitting the rock, it's going on, and saying, where? So they've taken this out to try to show more of a disability. So in a way, the soccer program is so good they're getting punished because the athletes, Dustin's a very good soccer player, should be playing Premier League soccer, Vancouver, playing at a high level. But it got to the borderline where they're almost getting chased out of the Paralympics because the level's too good. But is that because we've done a good job coaching all the countries, or because the disability is too minor? So they have disabilities, but for the Paralympics, it's becoming a bit of an issue. So we've gone through that again, so we just explained that idea, how in the fact that we play 7-side soccer. So on a normal funding year where if we're planning for an event, big event or something, add the money, we work like the women's girls national team on demand. So all of our players, not all of our players, but most of our players are carded athletes. Right? So they get paid by Sport Canada, right? So they get paid anywhere from $900 a month tax-free to $1,500 a month tax-free. The women's national team, Christine Sinclair, said they get paid $1,500 a month tax-free. Plus perks, our best players and senior players get paid $1,500 a month plus tax-free. Free cell phone, free ball minutes, free when they go to school, university, books are paid for, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So they have a very nice life if they can keep up to what we're asking them to do, right? So our national day basically only made, but like 70 days a year they should be together. We have 1 or 2 international tournaments a year in Europe or South America. We have 4 or 5 domestic camps here across Canada. Then we always go down to San Diego or Las Vegas once a year just because it's very nice and warm there to train. So, and I have contact there where we can access the field. When they're not with me, they should be playing 11-side soccer or 7-side, but basically should be playing able-bodied soccer, games once a week, daily training. Classifications, specific training and testing, physical and technical. So the karting part is huge, right? If we actually weren't paying the kids to play, and we demanded that much out of them every year, it'd be tough for them to play. So right now, the senior players, we have approximately 22 players that we know of and are close to being karted. We have development players, we have kids at 8, 9 years old we know of now that we're following around. We go watch them play once a year. And it's pretty neat to see a game of finding the able-bodied world. So this is an older now, but I've probably seen close to 120 or 130 athletes in the last few years with disabilities that we go and watch and have a look at them. Again, from the rankings from there. So these are the top countries. So it's in the disability world, it's interesting. I mean, they're basically the top soccer countries in the world. So we're back to the same old thing. It's soccer in Canada is the soccer the same as in the world. The same as the able-bodied women's team, same as the men. The women's team is closer to us than the men's team. The men's team, the top teams are, are the Brazils and Spains, et cetera, and the women's teams, they're kind of like we are. So these 2 teams have been number 1 and 2 off and on for the last, as long as I've been around. Again, I would never say it, but suspiciously, your athletes are amazing. Not for me, but Brazil's quality. The difference between Brazil and Holland and Ireland, Argentina, Scotland, compared to Canada and USA, is the fact that it's just like able-bodied soccer. It doesn't matter if they're just doing it when they're 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, they're playing soccer. You live in Brazil, you just play soccer. You don't go play ice hockey. You don't go play softball or whatever. You play soccer. So some of our players, it's getting better now. Again, our players, some of us weren't playing soccer until they were older, or if they were playing soccer when they were younger, back in the early 2000s, by the time they got 12 years old, they were probably getting kicked out of soccer by the coaches because they weren't good enough when they were chasing them out of the game. But nowadays, we've got control, CSA's got control now, where there's no more chasing out until the game. If they want to play, they can control. But these guys are just soccer. Right? This team here, Holland, has a full-time residency program. The players all live together, they all go to school in Holland. Any kids with a disability all go to one school. Every kid in Holland that has a disability goes to one school. So the coach is at that school every day of his life. He starts handpicking kids from the time they're 5 years old, 6 years old, 4 years old. They start training every day. So they got a little bit of advantage over us. So this is kind of this is the 4-year circle that we do, or cycle that we do, and we do it goes non-stop. So right now, we just came back from this event here, which was in Barcelona, Spain. Top 16 teams in the world. We did good enough there that we just moved up the world ranks. We were 12th one in that event. We finished off 11th in the world. This year coming up, we got the Americas Regional qualifying. It's held in Toronto. So the Canada, USA, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Venezuela, some of the top teams in the world. So we're holding this in Toronto, University of Toronto. 2015, we're back in Toronto for the Pan Am Games, and also the Sea Breezer World Championships, which is the governing body for soccer, and that is the World Championships. Is the top 8 teams from here go back to Brazil and Rio de Janeiro for the Paralympics. And then 2017 will be that, 2018 will be that, 2019 will be that, 2020 will be Brazil. We just keep going around, which is very positive for our program. In the able-bodied world, if the men's Olympic team didn't qualify, there'd be no funding for that. They would just go nothing for the next 2 years. Unfortunately, horrendous. The money's not huge in Canada for that world, or the girls, but they don't qualify as well. So, the fact that we have something internationally that means something every year, it's positive for our athletes. If you have a Facebook page and you want to track down there's videos on all the athletes, there's videos on our games, pictures, goals, et cetera,